Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I have a live lesson to share with you. At least part of it will be live. We are going to be doing some artwork using these two books as inspiration. This is for a mini Alaska and Arctic unit study that we're doing, and we were so inspired by these two books, which I will show you, and we decided to do a little bit of artwork to complement this unit, since this unit is very quick and we are not doing any other projects exactly, and so we decided to do some artwork. So my daughter has chosen a picture, an illustration out of the book called Raven and the Tide Lady. And I also want to share with you how Devil's Club came to be. These two books I purchased in Alaska recently when we were visiting, and they are about native tribal tales of, They both are. Yep. So this one is about how Devil's Club came to be, which is a medicinal herb that is grown in certain parts and maybe even all throughout Alaska, but where we were visiting, especially near Mount Denali, this medicinal plant grew in abundance. And then this book is called Raven and the Tide Lady, and this one is about how the tides came to be. My daughter is choosing this image to use as inspiration for her drawing. We are going to be doing these with pastels, and I have from Paper, Scissors, Stone. I don't even know if they still have this. This is super old. We don't work with a lot of pastels often. This is white pastel paper, and it is 9.5 inches by 12.5 inches, and we only have 25 sheets, so we're going to be really careful and quite frugal with this and just use one sheet each. So whatever mistakes we do, we need to incorporate that into our illustration. I also want to share with you the pastels that we're using. I have Lyra pastels, and for some reason I couldn't find them, so we're going to be using our Faber Castell pastels, and this I believe is a brand new set, which I've had. Oh nope, I have used it a little bit. Okay, so let us get our papers positioned. You're going to be doing that one, and I will give you a little bit more space right here. And the only thing is that this is going to be really somewhat messy, so don't touch the paper, or rather don't touch the book as you're working through your illustration. Do you have enough space here? And then let me just look through this one real quick. Otherwise, I will do what you're doing. It's really beautiful.
Also do
oh, careful. Let's pull that out.
You can also do, there was one I like.
I think I like the colors in the other book. Ooh, this one's really pretty too. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
I think it'll be easier than this one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this one.
You want to do this one?
Yeah, but are you gonna do this one?
I'll tell you what, hold on, close the book. If we want to do this one, you know what would be really cool is if we did our illustrations this way, and you do this side and I do this side, and then they can kind of be together.
Oh yeah, so it's
you
not
want
that
to do
hard.
Yeah, that way we're both.
How about on that side?
Yeah, I'll trade places with you. Okay, and then I'll leave the pastels on your side. Let me see. Yeah, is this the best place to put it?
Yep.
Okay, so why don't we start, and that way, is this a good spot for you too? Mm-hmm. So why don't we start, and then you can, let me just actually grab a couple of colors that I might need, and that way I don't have to go over you. And also maybe a little bit of this one, and maybe a little bit of the white, which you can use too. Actually, I'll take this one and I'll leave you with the white. And then I might need like this color. Okay.
2 whites.
Oh, perfect. Okay, then go ahead and do that, and we will start. Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna start.
Go ahead, and I'm going to do, I think, ooh, I like this color. I'm gonna do my rocks first. Do I want to do my rocks? Actually, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll do my waves first. And then we can use our hands to blend. Okay, that's the Tide Lady like this. A lot of the times when we're working on a live lesson like this, it is a pretty quiet experience. Gone are the days when I've got little children and toddlers who are interrupting our lessons, and we can tend to have really almost meditative quiet lessons like this when we're working on art or projects together. So we're working with our pastels, and we're going to end up finding them pretty difficult to work with for this particular drawing because we're looking for something, we're looking for a particular look for our illustrations, and we're not achieving that at all. And my daughter's having quite a difficult time with her pastels, or we're using the same ones, but with her technique, and we're going to end up changing our mind, but we're not going to realize it's not working until much later in the process. And so I'm going to walk you through that whole process of kind of switching gears.
Okay.
Lovely. You can also use your fingers to blend. Okay, why don't you wait till after?
Just this is like a ton of like these colors.
Yeah, it is. We want to blend the colors so they look a little bit more like the images in the book. And my daughter is using the pastels pretty heavy-handed, and so there isn't a lot of room to blend the colors once you lay them down that thick. I realized that even though I've laid mine down much less thick, it's still going to be difficult to blend. So we're going to try to use our fingers, and I think that we might even use a blending tool, but before we even get to that point, we decide to use our chalk pastels. You know, I've done mine lighter so that I can come back in and blend afterwards. So if you're feeling
how
like...
do you make it all? Right.
You know how it's kind of flat here, like this. You see how this is flat? You can use that flat part. You see how I'm just kind of making it flat like that? Then you can come back in afterwards and blend it if you want. There are some trees right where our 2 pages come together right here if you want to draw some trees. And then I'm going to do kind
So I
of...
don't have to like cover all the blue.
I'm going to reach over you for a minute.
Right?
Oops. What'd you say?
I don't have to cover all the white.
No. Well, because
Because you're going to blend it.
we're going to blend it. Yeah. Oops, that was not the color I wanted. That looks almost green. So I'm gonna, that's not white at all. That,
It is white.
I think it just, some kind of chemical reaction occurred.
It's white, but I must use green on it.
You know, we should also get our chalks. Wouldn't that be nice? I think with the chalks it would blend more than what I'm thinking this is blending. We're trying to blend our pastels and it's not working. Plus I picked up something that I thought was white and it turned out to be green, and I'm not really pleased with the way that it's looking on my illustration, and my daughter's is looking great, but she's not super pleased with it either. And so we're going to get through the majority of this drawing. Actually, I'm going to complete mine before we completely switch gears. Now, at the beginning, I was pretty frugal with our pastel paper because we don't have a lot of this, and I wanted us to really focus on doing our best work possible without having to start and stop and just kind of not put a lot of effort into it. Well, that kind of drove us to get to nearly the completion of this project before we realized this just is not working the way that we want it to work, before we pulled out another sheet of paper. Now, generally I have a lot of supplies, so I'm not so worried about going through our supplies if there's some trial and error. But when we first started homeschooling, we had very limited supplies, and I was really frugal with all of our supplies, making sure that we used scratch paper to practice on, so that that one piece of really expensive pastel paper or watercolor paper could be used for our final project for our lesson and not just be wasted. So finally at this point, we're going to switch gears and use our chalks. I'm using my Sargent Art Chalk Pastels. We're going to have a completely different look once we start using our chalk pastels. Okay. All right, I'll put these next to you so that you can use them more easily.
I'm gonna use these.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
They have more variety.
Yeah.
So we're gonna blend it in the end. Because it's just blend it.
Yeah. But you know, you can use this chalk just to blend it.
Okay.
I'll give it to you. I'll put it, like, take the whole thing and take it close to you.
No, it's okay. I don't really like these colors, but use.
So it turns out that my daughter is still going to work through using the pastels rather than the chalk pastels because she likes that there are more colors and more varieties to choose from in our pastel set. So she's going to keep working on that while I use the chalks to try to blend the chalk with the pastels, and I think that that's going to kind of give it a good look, but I'm still not quite achieving what I want. I want more of that ethereal look, and you can see my daughter really being able to blend those colors at the lower part of her drawing, and she's now using the chalk over the pastels, and I think that she's really liking the way that this turns out. Now this is a really, really messy project, more messy than even just using regular watercolors because you can just wipe those up pretty easily, but when you're using chalks or even chalk pastel especially, or rather just chalks and chalk pastel kind of give you a lot of dust, which then as you try to wipe it up it just kind of spreads, and then pastels themselves are pretty oily, and so you do need to be mindful of it. She's wearing a white shirt and a white sweater, and she is pretty careful about not dragging her sleeves through the chalks, but that's something that you want to be mindful of when you're working with these kinds of art mediums, is that they can just get everywhere and all over your hands and all over your clothes, and so you want to be a little bit mindful of that when you are doing these art projects, and especially when you're doing them with younger children or when younger children and toddlers and babies are in your homeschool with you. This might be something that you wait until nap time or until someone is around that can help watch the little ones so that you can really stay focused on the art project with the student. Okay, so we're not really pleased with the way this is going. So we are going to try again, and instead of using our chalk pastels, now I don't know where each one of these goes, we are going to use our, wow, that that did not go in the right spot. We are going to just use our Sargent Art Chalk Pastels rather than just our pastels. So we're going to put these ones away and clean this up and try again. And that's what happens sometimes. Let's try again, and I think I'm gonna have to hunt down some more pastel paper. Or, you know, on occasion we just use regular paper, but let's go ahead and pull this out. Do you want to do the same thing? Same image? Let's try it again.
Okay.
Goodness, it's really stuck in here.
So should I snap this in half so they don't get some?
No, that's not unless you really just need a smaller piece. You can snap it if you need to. Okay, let me just, excellent. Okay, so now we're going to use our smaller set of Sargent Art Chalk Pastels. I'll leave this on your side. Whatever I can find from these, from our old set, then you can, actually you might need this one. I'll leave this one with you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Start.
Let's start again. Okay. I'm going to start again with her hair. As we work through our drawing for the second time, I want to give you a little bit of a background on how we put together these lessons, why we are putting them together, and what they really mean within the whole unit study or main lesson block that we're doing. So this particular unit study happens to be a very short unit study that came about pretty spontaneously. It's one that's focused on Alaska and the Arctic, and with more of a wintry theme, although the two books that we're using as art inspiration for this particular lesson happen to be native tales, and so they're not really seasonal so much as they just explain natural phenomenons that happen in the region. So this one is about the tides and how the tides used to just be high all the time, and no one could hunt for food or gather food or get the animals that are beneath the water line. And so the raven sort of tricks the tide lady into releasing the tide, and that's why there are tides that go back and forth, and that way, you know, the animals and people as well can get food from the shore. The other book that we are using as art inspiration is called How Devil's Club Came to Be, and this is a native tale that explains the origins of Devil's Club, and that is a medicinal plant, and just how that medicinal plant came to be and why it is cherished and honored for its medicinal properties. So the rest of our unit happens to be pretty seasonal inspired. It's more about winter, snow, dog sledding, Arctic animals that are more present possibly in the winter months. And to include some lessons in this meant that we didn't really have a lot of time since this was a short unit, and we couldn't really do a lot of things that involved snowy weather because we live in Southern California and we had only just visited temporarily. So we decided, because we were inspired by the images in this book, to do a little bit of art. And so doing this art for me is an opportunity to slow down, because when we're going through a lot of our books, we are consuming all this information, consuming these illustrations, consuming just the volume of books that we go through, but we're not producing any work. Because this is a main lesson block that actually doesn't have any written work or projects that go along with it, at least that's the way I initially put it together, is just a collection of books that we would read for the week. I decided that having a few projects that were not as involved, but still gave us moments of reflection, were going to be really helpful in having some of this information settle with us and be a little bit more profound, to linger a little bit longer. So when we are consuming our books, we can easily get overloaded with information. We can easily get preoccupied with the number of books that we're reading, or the types of books, or the type of information. And so having an opportunity to do a project and to reflect on the information, even though this is really slow, and even though we have no written work to go along with it, the fact that we are pausing and spending time, and this whole lesson was maybe about 45 minutes from start to finish, including our starts and stops and redos, gave us an opportunity to examine the images on the page and reflect on the story, and hopefully long after this lesson is over, we have this experience to carry us through this whole entire unit, and somewhat of an anchor to remember the whole unit as a whole. So we might not remember everything that we studied, but we have one pivotal experience that helps anchor the entire unit. That's sort of the thought process behind why sometimes we slow down to do a project that doesn't seem to have any immediate educational value. The value is really in slowing down, pausing, reflecting, and working through something that takes time. Now, we often don't have a lot of time for our projects, I know. And so when you do make the time for it, you sort of maybe feel like, oh, I could be doing this, or I should be doing that. And we don't immediately see that there is educational value in something like this. And so I want to share my perspective on why doing this kind of art, doing a hands-on project, even heading to the kitchen, going on a field trip, however difficult that might be, or you're just heading outside, all of those experiences are deeply educational, they're profound, they're memorable, and they're lasting. At this point in the art project, my daughter has experimented with a couple of images that didn't work out, so she just layered over them. And that's what's super great about working with chalks, especially the chalk pastels that have a nice rich color, is that they're really great if you mess up. You can just kind of work over it. However, if you get some colors mixed in that you didn't expect to mix in, they can smear really easily. So she's got this black kind of, maybe it looks like a rock or somewhat of an image kind of near her trees and her water line, and that's starting to smudge quite a bit. Even though I think that all the colors ended up looking really great in the end, when you over blend, you start to lose detail. And that's something that with each art medium, you will learn those subtleties of what the medium can do for you and what you can do with the medium. And so we are typically using maybe crayons or color pencils or watercolors. And so working with chalk pastels means that now we have to reorient ourselves and get used to what it means to work with this new art medium. Now, this is really different than working with a chalkboard, where you can easily erase if you make a mistake, or you can layer your colors in a different way. When you're working on paper, and this is still pastel paper, with chalks, beautiful. So then the only thing that you might want to consider adding, you could, if you want, so that actually I still need to blend mine more, is you can do, which I don't think you can since I think you've already blended it, but if you wanted to, you can try doing that. Beautiful. You're going to have a different experience with how the colors blend and how you can layer them. Now, I like having the colors blend really well together so that you almost don't see any white page anymore. And then I like coming back in with an edge piece of the pastel or the chalk to really give some more definition over the layers that are already blended. At this point in our lesson, and by lesson I just mean our art experience, there is no written work to go along with this. Lovely. If whenever you're all done, you'll need quite a bit of soap to wash your hands.
If I'm done.
Beautiful. But at this point in the lesson, my daughter is pretty much done. And because she has over blended her work, you don't see any of the details. And because I'm focused on doing my artwork, I'm not giving her any direction on what she can do, except that she can layer in some additional images over her blended chalk, which she is doing now. But I didn't walk her through the whole process because this isn't an art lesson. This is an artistic representation of a lesson. And there's a huge distinction there because we're not teaching art. We are experiencing a lesson through art. And in that way, you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to have any background in art, which I do not. And you can just work with your art mediums and experience it. And it's really freeing, especially when you have some beautiful artwork to copy, which I almost always use artwork to copy because this isn't my natural skill set. But you can see that you can produce really beautiful work when you have something to copy, something to be inspired by. At this point, my daughter has finished her lesson and she's left. And almost like always, I am still trailing behind, finishing up whatever I'm working on when I'm working alongside with them. And one thing that I tend to overdo, or one thing that I do, is that I tend to overdo when I'm working with a project, especially with watercolors. And in this case, I'm going to keep layering and blending until things really start to lose their definition. And thankfully I stop before it gets to be just completely blended all together. But that is something that I struggle with in going too far. And generally children know naturally when to stop. And though my daughter did blend that completely until you can't recognize any of the shapes, in general, children know intuitively when to stop and they don't tend to overdo it. Not always, but I find that they are better capable of stopping when the art is done, which as we know with art, it's never finished, it's never done. It's just whenever you're ready to stop, you can always pick up an art piece once you've stopped. There is really no end. It's just when you decide that you are finished. But children have a great way of feeling satisfied with their work in a way that I haven't seen adults experience the same thing quite the same way. So at this point, I'm adding some black to blend in with the rocks because I didn't have quite the right colors to achieve the look that I wanted to copy from the book. So the book, whatever art medium they used, has so much layering dimension, and maybe it's done on a computer, I actually don't know. And so you are able to get those lights and darks that really give the rocks and the rest of the image some dimension, some depth. And I love that from artwork that I see, and trying to achieve that is quite a challenge. So I am going to do my best to try to layer in some of those darker colors onto the rock and then blend it both with my fingers as well as with a lighter chalk to just kind of give all those colors a more uniform look. And I'm using either white or gray in order to blend those rocks together, and I'm really liking the way that it turns out. So I'm going to start doing that to most of the drawing, and then come back in with those same colors just to make it look like that water is going all around those rocks and kind of cascading down from the Tide Lady's hair. These lessons for me represent a moment to kind of decompress from some of the other work that we're doing throughout the day. Now, most of our unit studies and main lesson blocks are really book heavy, which means that we are all doing a lot of listening and reading. And primarily we're doing read alouds, which means that I'm reading every day, especially in the winter, 1 to 2 hours a day. In the spring and in the fall, maybe half hour to an hour max. But definitely in the winter time when we're doing our main lesson blocks and unit studies, because we're primarily focused on our history units where there is a lot of reading, I end up reading for a really big portion of our school day. So when we can stop and do something like this, it really gives my brain and even just my mouth a break to just have some quiet time. Even though the children have had their quiet time, they end up being a little bit more meditative and quiet during this process whenever we're doing our art or our hands-on projects. My daughter is a little bit more, actually a lot more talkative than my son, but it's also an age thing. As the children go through these different age milestones, you'll find that at some points they are more talkative and at other times they are more reflective. And when you have children that do a lot of talking, doing something that engages their other senses like art or a hands-on project allows them to have more quiet and reflective times. And it's really important for children and adults to have those times of work where their brains are working and their mouths are working and even their ears and their eyes are working, to a point where you can use your other senses and exercise other skills so that you can have some more reflective moments to let that information digest.
Oh, I like yours. I don't really like mine.
Aww. I like your colors so much. You know, the colors are just these beautiful colors that you see in the sky and in the water this time of year.
Yeah?
In Alaska. I think that's what it felt like when we were there. All that information that you've taken in, it needs a place to be processed and then released. And I find that art and hands-on projects are a really great way to process that information that you have taken in from the school day. That tree just totally blended in, but I did. At least I can still see your trees.
I can see your tree.
Well, I think, oh, you know what? Let me just do her arms a little bit. So it almost looks like it's just kind of hiding into the... Of course, sleeping and play are two other really great things that need to happen for a child in order for that information that has been learned in the day to be processed and digested and turned into long-term memory. And so we also don't want to forget how important those two things are for our children as part of their education. Okay, we're done. And now the only thing that's left is to actually clean up. Let's clean this up. So now that everything is done, we're going to use this Blick matte fixative, and that way nothing will transfer and it'll stay nice and safe, and we will keep our artwork from being damaged. So I'm gonna head outside and do that a little bit, and then this project is all done. No writing or anything else, that's it. Here's one more look at the art once it's done and sprayed. I really love the way that the art turned out. Here's the image from the book that we copied. Both images are really beautiful and rich, and the book that we used is called Raven and the Tide Lady. I hope you enjoyed this live tutorial lesson. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video for more information on this unit study. If you'd like to see some of the other projects we did for our Alaska and Arctic unit study, you can tap on the screen right now. That link is also in the description box below. If you want to see how our homeschool is progressing on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.